Welcome back to another enlightening episode of The Truth About the Plant, the show that takes you on a journey through the world of psychoactive plants and alternative wellness, all while delivering real, actionable insights you crave. I'm your host, Christina Dees, and this is my equally talented and amazing co-host, Dr. Amanda Ryman. Dr. Ryman and I, we show up every week, 5 o'clock on Eastern Time, 2 o'clock Pacific Time, to bring you the truth about the plants in 20 minutes or less. Sometimes we go over, sometimes we go under, but our aim is to bring you the truth. Dr. Ryman, why do we do all this?
We do this because it can be so difficult to find reliable, science-backed, and helpful information about cannabis on the internet. Not only is discussion about cannabis, even educational discussion, banned on most social media platforms, but everybody out there thinks they're an expert. So you may have a really valid question about cannabis, one that may even relate to your health and safety, and you Google it and you get 100 different answers, all from people who tell you that that's the truth. And a lot of times those answers completely contradict each other. So we're here to cut through all of that. We're going to give you the real information in 20 minutes or less so you can get what you need and get on with your day. You can think of us as your really cool aunties or your kick-ass granddaughters, the women in your life who will always tell you the truth.
I'm really excited about our topic this week because I know a lot of people out there are going to relate to this one. So, have you ever been curious about cannabis, but been held back by a little voice saying, maybe this isn't for me? Or maybe you low key want to try it, but honestly, you're kind of scared? You are not alone. Today, we're going to tackle a question that many people have, but they don't always say it out loud. Why am I afraid to try cannabis? So, from stigma to science, myths to mindset, we're going to break it all down for you so you can approach the plant with confidence, curiosity, and even just a little more clarity. So, Dr. Ryman, with cannabis more accessible now than ever, especially in legal states, but also in illegal states still, people who have never considered buying it illegally are intrigued. Even I see grandmas that want to try it. They're actually considering it for the first time, and they come from an era where it was not okay to mess around or to sample. So from, we've got classic dispensaries in the hemp beverage section at the wine store. We've got classic dispensaries and then we've got hemp beverage sections at, wine and more. It's never been more easy to obtain a legal cannabis product, but yet a lot of people still don't know about it. So I think they're curious, but they don't know if it's safe and they're kind of a little scared. So more and more people, they're looking to reduce alcohol consumption and their use of prescription over-the-counter medicines. Cannabis is a green beacon of possibilities. So what do you think is preventing the new customer from taking the plunge? I recently spoke with a young woman in her 20s. She's in college who's intrigued by cannabis to treat the symptoms of PMS, but she admits that she's scared to try it. So I'm asking you, why do you think that is?
So this is a really great question. For those of us who have used cannabis, who have enjoyed cannabis, it might be hard to understand why somebody would be afraid of cannabis. After all, as we've mentioned on this show, it's been used as a medicine across cultures, across the world for thousands of years. So this isn't a new invention. This isn't something that is synthetically made unless you're talking about a hemp-derived product. And so why would people be afraid to try it? Well, as we've spoken on in previous shows, sometimes people feel a certain way about something, but they don't really know how to articulate why they feel that way. And that's really the impact of decades of fear mongering and propaganda. So cannabis has been messaged to us as something that's extremely dangerous, something that can make you lose your mind. We're going to go into some of these messages in a little bit. So people might feel that something bad will happen if they use cannabis, but they're not really sure why they feel that way or what they think might happen. They just have a feeling that that's going to be bad. And that's really conditioning. After hearing message after message, so many very special episodes of sitcoms and after school specials when we were growing up, talking about people trying cannabis and bad things happening to them. They've kind of adopted this stance inside themselves that there is a big risk here. And instead of trying to understand why they feel that way or what the risks really are, it just kind of turns them off to the idea of trying cannabis in the first place.
Yeah, well, the young girl that I spoke with, she was interested in the suppositories. And those were courtesy of Hello Again. We had them on the show and they sent us some samples. So I brought them out at girls' night. And she was really excited, like, oh my gosh, I actually need this product. She wasn't afraid of the suppository, like, the application. She was just like, what's this going to do to me? And even though I talked to her and I explained, like, you're not going to feel high. It's not going to like make you feel anything. It's just going to give you the relief you need in the area you need it. So, but still, she decided not to take it. She was still ultimately too afraid to even, experiment, which I totally respect. I don't want to ever make someone uncomfortable. But what is underneath this fear, and how do you think this like prior messaging is impacting current expectations?
So, if people were asked to articulate what exactly is that fear that they have, I think these are some of the messages you would get, right? So, I'm going to get too high. And if I'm too high, I'm not going to like the way it feels. And I'm going to be out of control, right? I'm going to do things that are foolish. I'm going to say things that I regret, that it might trigger psychosis. It could trigger some kind of mental health issue, that I'm going to get addicted, that if I try it once, I'm just going to want to keep using it, and that the negative things are going to happen as a result of that. I'm going to have impaired memory. I'm not going to remember things. It's going to make me stupider. And we're actually going to do an episode next week on, or in a couple weeks, will weed make me stupid, right? So there's this idea that it lowers your IQ, that it hurts you cognitively. So people are afraid of that. And I think one of the big fears that people have, along with the getting too high, is that they're not going to like the feeling of being high and that there's nothing they can do about it. Right. So that they're going to enter into this intoxicated state. They're going to quickly realize that it's not what they like. They're going to panic or start to get anxious as a result of not liking that feeling. And then there's really nothing they can do about it. They're just going to have to wait until the feeling wears off. And I think at the bottom of it, that's really what a lot of people are afraid of. So, we did a consumer survey at my job of cannabis consumers and former consumers. And we asked former consumers why they stopped using cannabis. And you might think a reason was, well, I had a family, or I started getting drug tested, or I moved to a state where it wasn't legal anymore. But actually, the number one reason people stopped using was because they just didn't like the feeling of being high. So, those of us who have enjoyed the feeling of being high, that might be hard to understand. You're like, what's to not like about it? It's euphoria. It makes you relax. It makes things more interesting. It makes food taste better. It makes conversations better. But not everybody enjoys that feeling. And the reality is, you don't know if you're one of those people until you try it. So there's this fear that I don't know if I'm one of those people or not. And I may get myself into something that really impacts me negatively, where I have a really bad experience, and that there could be lasting effects as a result of that experience. So people who know me know that I love analogies. Analogies are like literally how I explain everything in the world. So I did think of a good analogy for this. And my analogy for this is roller coasters, right? So there are people that love roller coasters, and they like, the more intense, the better. The more loops, the more corkscrews, the faster it goes, the bigger the drops. Like, that's what they want. They are for it. Like, they never get nauseous. They never get anxious. They just absolutely enjoy it. And then there's people who won't set foot on any roller coaster. It doesn't matter if it's just the little kiddie coaster at the park that has like one moderately sized hill. They just aren't interested at all. And the thing is that people don't really know which camp they're in until they try it. So we don't grow up without being on a roller coaster knowing that we're really going to like or dislike being on a roller coaster. It's the kind of thing where you have to get on one. You have to see if you enjoy those sensations while they're happening, and if they have any negative lasting effects for you, like being nauseous the rest of the day. And I think a lot of people are scared to try a roller coaster because they're like, all right, what if I'm in the group that hates them? Like, what if I'm in the group where I'm going to be super scared the whole time and terrified and nauseous, and then I'm going to be nauseous the rest of the day? And I don't want to take the risk because I don't want to have that negative experience. Now, some folks might say, well, I like other types of thrill rides, or my parents really like roller coasters. So I have a feeling that maybe I will like it. And other people might say, oh my God, I get nauseous just like looking down on an escalator. Like, I know I'm not going to be the kind of person that likes a roller coaster. And so they may not get on it. Some people might say, well, if you've never been, the best thing to do is to get on the highest, fastest, most intense roller coaster you can find for your first time. Just like rip the band aid off, and then you'll learn to like it because you'll have just gone on like the most extreme roller coaster there is. But I think this is a lot like trying cannabis, because some people will try cannabis and they'll love it and they'll say, this is great. Oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? And some people can use very high concentrated cannabis, very high potency, never have a bad time, never feel like they're feeling overwhelmed or anxious. Where some people take 2 milligrams of THC and they get really paranoid and really anxious. And so I think for people that are afraid to try cannabis, just like people that are afraid to go on roller coasters, we go back to the start low, go slow. So you don't have to get on the most intense ride right away. Start with the kiddie coaster, dip your toe in, see if you like it, see if that sensation is something that agrees with you before you move on to something bigger. Because just like with roller coasters, if you start your cannabis journey with a super high potency, super intense experience and you don't like it, your memory in your body and in your mind might make it difficult for you to try cannabis for the foreseeable future without triggering some of those same effects. So that is my roller coaster analogy. So if you're out there thinking about cannabis, try to relate it to something like a roller coaster. If you get on a roller coaster and you hate it and it's making you super anxious, you can't just stop it and get off.
Well, it's funny. I use the roller coaster analogy as well. Like you just said, there is no off button. So once you get on, you have to ride it out. And I am not surprised that the number one reason that people stop using it is because they have a bad experience. I'm hearing that more and more these days. And it kind of goes back to why dosage is so important and education and learning about it. And it's why we do what we do and we show up every week. The other one of the future episodes, speaking of, I think we're going to talk about what's the difference between old school weed, new school weed, because now people are getting too high and they don't want to. So it's kind of like, how do I find something that's not going to make me feel out of control and have a bad experience? So I think these fears are justified, but could these things actually happen?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you may not like the feeling of being high, just like you may not like the roller coaster, right? Your friends may love it. They may want to ride it 10 times. You may get on once and say, nope, totally not for me. You are intoxicated. So, yes, you could do something that you think is silly or foolish. You could be talking really loudly when you don't think you are. You could be laughing at things that you wouldn't usually laugh at. Your coordination could be off and you could bump into something. All of these things. I'll tell you a quick story. So, when I was a younger person, my friends and I got really, really stoned and we went to Denny's. And Denny's has a dish on the menu called Moons Over My Hammy. And this struck me as so funny. I tried to order it like 10 times and I could not get the words out. I was laughing so hard. And the waitress was like, if you cannot order like a human being, you're going to have to leave. Because we were all just like so giggly and silly. I mean, we were like 20 years old, right? I mean, we were so like things that ordinarily would not strike you as funny could totally strike you as funny. So, yes, that may happen. You may feel out of control. Again, you're intoxicated. If you're highly intoxicated, you might get a bit of a disassociative feeling, which can be uncomfortable. And we've talked about kind of grounding exercises and ways to breathe through that anxiety, but this is possible. You may have short term memory impacts when you're intoxicated, which we now call senior moments, right? So, like, you walk into a room to get something and you're like, why did I walk in here? And that happens to me all the time, even when I'm completely sober. But it's something that can be intensified when you're high. You are very unlikely to experience negative mental health impacts or addiction, especially after just a few times of consuming. And we've talked about this as well. If you're somebody that has a history of mental health issues or a family history of mental health issues, if you get anxious or overwhelmed very easily, take care anytime you use a psychoactive substance. So those types of effects are very rare, but they are possible. I say more likely you could just not enjoy yourself and say, I don't like this, I want it to end. Or you could say something that you wouldn't necessarily think is funny, but it is. You could knock something off the table. But we're really talking about very mild side effects.
Well, we have an entire library of episodes and topics. So if you're listening right now and you have a question or you're thinking of something, check our library because chances are we've answered that question on the show. And if we haven't, send it to us because we'd love to answer it. We do have an episode about how to become a cannabis consumer. So for those people listening right now, how can we help them reduce the chance of a negative outcome or experience?
Well, we've already mentioned this, which is start low and go slow. Don't feel like you have to get on the biggest, twistiest, most intense, most loops, most corkscrew roller coaster of a cannabis experience the first time you do it, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with starting off on the kiddie coaster. In fact, we absolutely recommend it because you want to get used to how it feels being high. There's a sociologist named Howard Becker, and years ago, like in the 50s, he wrote a book called Becoming a Marijuana User. And it's this cute little book. It's available online if you're interested. But he interviewed a bunch of people that used cannabis to find out kind of what is the process of becoming a cannabis consumer. And there was really three pieces to that. One was that you had to learn how to actually get it in your body. So for people that had never smoked before, they had to learn about inhaling from a joint and like what that mechanism was. The second was that you had to learn what it was like to be high. And that wasn't just an innate thing. I mean, yes, there's a chemical process going on in your brain, but you had to be around people that were also high. So you could kind of see what they were doing. And it was kind of like a social learning process. And then the third thing is that you had to learn to enjoy it. So it wasn't enough to just be able to get the smoke in your lungs and see how you were supposed to act when that happened. But then you had to see people laughing and having a good time. Cannabis use is so sensitive to set and setting that it's really important that you're around people that you trust, people that also have good cannabis experiences, and to really understand the impact of dose and the impact of methods of consumption. Even though smoking is not our preferred method of consumption, as we talked about on this show before, inhalation is definitely a better way to titrate your dose. So using something like a full flower vaporizer, a volcano, something where you're vaporizing the product but still using inhalation. With inhalation, you're going to feel it the fastest and it's also going to wear off the fastest. So if you are like, I don't like this, it's like a 30-second roller coaster versus like a 5-minute roller coaster. And you're going to be off that ride a lot more quickly. So inhalation is a good method for newer consumers. And I would say finally, don't be hard on yourself if you're afraid to try cannabis. Don't be embarrassed. Don't feel like, oh, all these people are using cannabis and it's like this hot thing and these celebrities are talking about it and these influencers are talking about it. And here I am afraid to try it. I know that when I was growing up and going to amusement parks with my friends, I was very nervous to go on roller coasters and I felt embarrassed about it, right? Like they were all like gung ho, like, oh yeah, let's go get in the line for like the biggest roller coaster. And I was really nervous about it, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to feel like I was the scaredy cat of the group or the one who wasn't cool. And even though we don't feel as much peer pressure as adults as we do as teenagers, there's still that like, oh, everyone else is doing it and loving it. And so I should do it and love it too. But don't feel that way. You know, it took decades to create these feelings of fear and concern and anxiety about using cannabis. They're not going to go away overnight. Even when cannabis becomes legal, changing that legal status, which does happen overnight when the laws change, doesn't change the decades of propaganda that taught us that cannabis was a very dangerous thing, that there were all these risks associated with it. So give yourself some time. Really think about making it a mindful experience, plan for it. You know, make sure that, like I said, you're someplace where you feel comfortable with people that you feel comfortable, and then just let yourself try it. And you know what? If you don't like it, you don't like it. I hear a lot of comedians talk about how they would like tell their friends they don't like weed. And their friends will be like, oh, you just haven't tried the right strain, or oh, you just haven't tried the right edibles product. And the reality is, some people just don't like weed. Okay. Some people just do not like the way it feels. It's not for them. It's not their thing. Some people don't like roller coasters. Others find it hard to believe. So, you know, if you don't like it, or if you're with someone that's like, you know, I've tried it, it's just not my thing, let it go. It's not everybody's thing. And so, the thing is finding out what's right for you and doing what makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah, and I just want to echo everything you just said. I think more and more I'm hearing stories of bad experiences. So maybe there are people that have a history of using it and they have that one bad experience and they swear it off. And so that's another reason that we do this show is it's really important for us to educate consumers and even potential consumers, those canna curious people, so that you can make decisions that are going to best take care of you. I know we talk a lot on the show about recreation use versus adult use or therapeutic use. And so I don't want to scare anyone with this conversation. I think it's very valid to be scared and also be curious at the same time. And so our hope is that we bring you enough information that, you feel confident when you are in that situation or that setting, and like Amanda said, starting with a low dose. And that is the one thing that I will say I hear in every story is they took too much. And so really understanding the product that you're taking and the dosage that you're taking. And if you don't take it, because chances are if you take a higher dose and you're a first time user or you're not experienced, you are going to have a bad experience. You are going to get on a roller coaster and there is no off button and you're going to have to ride it out. So we've got some other episodes to help if that were to happen, what you can do to take care of it. And don't worry, you're not going to overdose. You're not going to die.
Well, you could overdose, but you're not going to die.
Okay. You could take too much.
Yes. Overdose is too much of a dose.
Okay. There you go. I always think of overdose as in we have to bring you back to life.
Right. So we'll see that's I think we have an episode on can you overdose on THC. And I think that this is just an important point for people to know because yes, you can. An overdose simply means that you took more than you wanted and you're having a negative experience. You can overdose on cookies. You can overdose on ice cream. If I go eat a whole carton of ice cream, then I have a horrible stomach ache. Guess what? I ate too much ice cream. I ate more ice cream than I intended to eat. And now I'm having a negative effect. So I think we need to destigmatize the idea of overdosing. And it's not just somebody that like took too much opiates or fentanyl and now we need to use Narcan on them. It's really any time that you take more than you intended to and had a negative reaction. Now, luckily, you cannot fatally overdose on cannabis. So even if you take too much THC and you're like, this sucks, and oh my God, I feel panicky and I feel like the world's ending and I feel separated from my body, like all of those feelings can be very uncomfortable, but you will still live, which is important to remember.
That is. And thank you for that clarification because it is really important. I agree. And I don't want anybody to be so scared. So just know that your cool aunties got you. And that's why we're here. So if today's conversation sparked some thoughts, eased some fears, I hope, or maybe even made you low key rethink your stance on cannabis, we'd love to hear from you. And actually, the greatest gift that you can give us is sharing this episode with a friend. The more people that we can reach, the better. So please, if you love this episode or any other episodes, or you just love the show or you love us, tell your friends, share the love. And you can always drop us a line at info@mypersonalplants.com and share your thoughts, your questions there. And again, if you're craving more plant-powered wisdom insights, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel library. Subscribe, hit like, and the notification bell while you're there so you don't miss any episodes. We're on all of the podcast platforms now, so you can get your info and get on with your day. Until next time, stay curious, stay open-minded, and remember, knowledge is the best way to replace fear with confidence. We'll see you soon.